Sleeping Beauty. There was once a king and queen who waited a long time to have a child. When at last the queen gave birth to a baby girl, they were so excited that they held a big party to celebrate her christening. The king and queen invited all 7 fairies in their kingdom, who came with very special presents for the baby. The king had solid gold plates, knives, and forks made for them. But there was an 8th fairy who had been forgotten. She came stomping into the castle. Quickly, the servants laid a place for her at the table, but the plate, knife, and fork weren't made of gold. One of the younger fairies, sensing trouble, hid as soon as it was time to give the presents. The first fairy gave the princess the gift of beauty, the second gave good temper, the third gave grace, the fourth gave a wonderful singing voice, and the 5th and 6th fairies bestowed gifts of dance and music. Then the angry fairy said, "And when she is 16, she will prick her finger and die." Imagine everyone's horror. But the young fairy in hiding came out and said, "She will not die. She will fall asleep, and so will all the court. After 100 years, a prince will wake up our little princess with a kiss." The next day, the king banned all needles from the kingdom. But when the princess was 16, she stumbled across a secret staircase in the castle. At the top was a woman spinning at a wheel. The princess had never seen a spinning wheel and wanted to touch it. Immediately, the spindle pricked her finger and she fell down. Her parents found her and laid her on the best bed in the castle. Then they fell asleep, too, along with the servants, cats, and dogs. 100 years had passed when a young prince found a huge hedge of thorny roses. As he touched them with his sword, they sprang apart. Behind the hedge was a castle. The prince went inside and found everyone fast asleep. The prince roamed through the castle until he found the room where the princess lay. He bent down and kissed the sleeping beauty. The princess smiled and sat up, astonished to find the prince there. The prince and princess soon fell in love. Meanwhile, everyone in the castle was stirring. The wicked fairy's spell was broken at last. And as for the prince and princess, they lived happily ever after. The Little Mermaid. In the depths of the ocean, where the water is bluest, is the kingdom of the merpeople. It was here that the merking lived with his old mother and his daughters, the 6 merprincesses, in the most beautiful palace you could imagine. One by one, when they reached their 15th birthday, the princesses were allowed to visit the world above the water. The youngest princess couldn't wait for her turn to come. At last, when it was her 15th birthday, her grandmother said it was time for her to visit the human world. The Little Mermaid rose above the foam and caught her breath in surprise. The world was so very much more wonderful than she had imagined. All those on board were tossed into the water. The prince would surely have drowned if the Little Mermaid hadn't caught him in her arms, but she knew she couldn't take him back to her kingdom. The first thing she saw was a huge ship, and on board there was a birthday party for a handsome prince. But while the Little Mermaid watched, a terrible storm blew up. So she took him to the shore of an island, where a human princess found him. When the prince woke up, he naturally thought it was this princess who had rescued him. He knew nothing of the Little Mermaid, but the Little Mermaid thought of nothing but the prince. She had fallen madly in love with him and longed to be his wife. But he will never marry a princess with a tail, she lamented. And how am I to get a pair of legs? She set out to ask an enchantress who lived under the sea. The enchantress gave her a potion, but the mermaid had to pay a terrible price. She would lose her beautiful voice and feel pain every time she walked. But worst of all, the mermaid would turn into foam if the prince did not love her. The mermaid drank the potion and swam to the shore, where a dreadful pain split her tail, and she found she had legs. The prince, walking along the shore, found her there and took her back to his palace. The little mermaid became the prince's constant companion. She rode with him by day and danced for him every evening, even though the pain in her legs was like dancing on swords. But he did not love her. The prince had never forgotten the other princess, the one he believed had rescued him from drowning, and now he decided to marry her. The little mermaid watched the whole ceremony with a broken heart. She knew that she would turn into foam as soon as he kissed his bride. Her sisters swam to her and gave her a knife to kill the prince. "It's the only way to save your own life," they said. The little mermaid could not do it. She loved the prince too much. She kissed him goodbye and gave herself up to become foam. But the spirits of the air took pity on her and whisked her up to live with them. They promised that if she did good deeds for 300 years, she would live forever. If you like this story, then please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to press the bell icon. See you in the next story. Till then, thanks.